What is going on, people? Good to have you on board. Another episode of Unfiltered coming your way right here, right now. This one will go down as episode number 320 in your scorecard. You can jump on board 24/7, 365. It is easy. Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. Or you could jump on YouTube, search Unfiltered with Casey Stern, get all the videos, all the content, like, follow, and subscribe. 319, now into 320 episodes deep. A lot to get to today. We'll hit up some baseball, go around the horn a little bit as we head down the stretch. We're into those meaningful September games, and you know what September truly means. That is the NFL is back, and on the eve, literally, the season getting underway. We'll bounce around a little bit on the football side. As always, get to me your thoughts, your comments, your questions on Twitter or X, if you will, at Casey Stern, or you could jump in to the comments on YouTube throughout the course of the show or whenever you might be watching or listening. Good to have you on board. Let's get into the baseball side first in what's been kind of a weird season and a very wide open year. Now, it doesn't matter necessarily, let's be fair, looking over the years to say, well, this team's going to win. It's easy breezy. It's not like, in the NBA where there were years where I covered it where you just knew the Golden State Warriors were going to be there, or years where LeBron was in Cleveland or Miami where you just knew. And you could say, well, how many teams could truly win a title when the season even begins? And the answer is like 5, let alone being in September here with a month to go in baseball, where you may have more teams than even that number that you still believe have a legitimate shot to win the whole thing. Very wide open year. And a weird, strange year. I'm not going to get into it again. You can go back, I think it was episode 318, which I discussed this. But we sit here right now, Trey Turner of the Phillies hitting 301, and he the only guy in the National League hitting over 300, which is really, it's mind-boggling. It is mind-blowing, to be honest. Not to sit here and be like, oh, the baseball is bad, and, when back in my day. But let's all get on the lawn instead of getting off and be honest and say it is pretty embarrassing and somewhat pathetic that most of these teams don't seem like they get hit. And whether or not it's because of the way they're being taught, or whether or not it's because of the pitching, whether or not it's laziness, whether or not you can go into 100 different reasons why you think it's the case. End of the day, it doesn't change the fact not many teams get hit anymore. But what's been a hit is the parity and the wide open play, and the wild card certainly changed some of that years ago, and it gave more teams an opportunity to get involved and get into the postseason. But what a weird, interesting year we've got here with 1 month to go. I mean, it is pretty crazy. Give you an example at the forefront of this. Look at the Milwaukee Brewers. Team's got, as I sit here, 86 wins, 5 or 6 more than anybody in baseball. They're in that 1 seed overall. They've been the best team in baseball. And the question, if I'm being honest, is who believes in them? If I polled 100 people right now who cover this sport, and I said, okay, tell me what team in the National League going to come out and represent the NL in the World Series? What percentage of that 100, Family Feud, surveyed 100 people for the top 6 answers on the board, right? Where Milwaukee going to fit? They're not going to be number 1. I really don't think so. I think even without Wheeler, people would lean on Philadelphia. Well, the way that they still could pitch and the depth of the rotation and, the experience and the way they've played and how they play at home. Everybody going to get into LA. We understand. We want to hate on the Dodgers and say they're not as good as we thought they would be. Yada, yada. Doesn't matter. Opportunity's still going to knock at the door with a lot of stars that come to play in October for LA. The team I would probably pick right now, if I'm being fair, the San Diego Padres. The Mets are so, up and down, topsy-turvy, best record in baseball second half of last year, best record in baseball first part of this year, first 2+ months till June 13th. We all know that it fell off since then, right? 4th or 5th worst, whatever it is since then in Major League Baseball. But they could turn it on. We saw them do it last year in a 3-4 week span. The Cubs are a team people forget about, and they're very viable. So how many people are going to pick Milwaukee? And the interesting thing about it is they do everything well. They can pitch out of the bullpen, their rotation. Maybe you sit there and you don't know who Priester was before the season began. Some of you don't even know who he is now. or Mizorowski and we Jose Quintana. What? Like, they're getting it done. You know, Yelich, the resurgent year. We know what Vaughn has done since he's come over. He's been Babe Ruth Vaughn. You know, Churio is now back healthy. What, first day back, hits a home run in a ninth inning to win a game. And from the Tarangs to the Isaac Collinses, the amount of walk-offs, the amount of comebacks, Pat Murphy has this team rolling, and it really goes against the grain of everything I've ever said and the amount of times I've ever talked about, well, prospects are cool, parades are cool, you got to go for it. When you get at the deadline, you got to absolutely pound that pavement, and you got to go. You got to get yourself a chance to win the whole damn show, right? Well, they didn't really do anything. They never do anything, and here they are. Do you believe in Milwaukee? Are you in on the Brewers as a World Series contender, which is a crazy question when you're talking about a 1 seed? It reminds me of like when Matt Schaub was with the Texans. And like, I don't believe that. All the years the Capitals didn't with Ovi until they did, winning President's trophies, which for those of you not in the NHL or fans of that, had the best record, had the 1 seed, didn't seem to matter. They're going to get knocked off in the playoffs. You know, you can't buy it. Your goaltending's not good enough. Or, you know, they don't have the pedigree of succeeding in a postseason or whatever it might be. Are you buying Milwaukee in the National League? Because I think there is definitely a question. Look, even if we stay in the Central, even on the American League side of things, if we're being honest, let's be fair. Do you trust Detroit? Your Skubal can't pitch every day. Yeah, Mets just scored like 20-some-odd runs off them in the first 2 games of the series they just played in Detroit. Javi Baez has been a different player. He's hitting 9th now. He's not the guy he was in the first half. Well, I can get these guys out in big spots with the best pitching. Do they have enough in the mix-and-match bullpen? And AJ has done such a great job with them. I don't know. It's wide open in the American League as well. I mean, it's one of the great things about this season. You know, and because of that, you know, teams like the Yankees, who like every Yankee fan in the world has fired Aaron Boone. I mean, Boone had been fired like 1 million times by everybody in that fan base over and over and over and over and over. But they're still right there, 15 games over 500 as I do this on a Thursday. And sitting after a loss with just 3.5 back, tied with the Red Sox. They're right in it. Because can you trust Toronto? How many of these teams are really that good? Just the same way the hitting we talk about. I don't know. Is it great baseball? Are there great teams? Because the Brewers earned that. They've been that during the season. They deserve that. A couple of interesting scenarios on the baseball side, so I'm curious your take. How do you pinpoint? Let me know on Twitter at Casey Stern. Let me know in the comments on YouTube. Where do you kind of sit? That Family Feud surveyed 100 people, that top 6 answers in each category, AL, NL. How do you power rank, if you will, real opportunity to win a World Series? A couple of interesting things that happen in baseball that, depending upon how you look at it or what you believe, certainly are worth conversating about here over the last 7 days. One, the Kyle Freeland situation with Rafael Devers. So for those who missed that, there was a hullabaloo, if you will, when Devers admired his home run in the first inning. Freeland got mad. Things were said. Benches cleared. Now, I'm not sitting here and telling you that I love every time we're doing 17 different handshakes and movements and all kinds of, we're all the different pomp and circumstance when you get a double and you're down 6 runs that we look back to the dugout and go back to the claw with Texas years ago, all this other kind of stuff. But the game is a different game. The world is a different world than when you and I were kids. I'm 46, been watching the sport like 40 years as a diehard. And way different now than it was 10 and then 15, 20 years ago. So we got to understand that. But if I'm being fair, about to sound old as hell, I like what Freeland did. Now, if you're going to do something about it, do something about it. I don't like the fake tough on either side. When these guys yell at each other, just go at each other. If you're really going to do it, just do it. But I don't think anybody should be admiring a home run like that in a first inning either, if I'm being honest. I always defended Jose Bautista years and years ago when he hit that home run and everybody went crazy. It was the biggest home run in the franchise in 20 years. It was the first time they've been in the playoffs in decades. And when he did that against Texas and everybody kind of freaked out, it's like, get over it. That's a monumental moment. It's the moment of his career and his life. It's the moment of that franchise in decades. That's not the case with Devers' first inning home run. So I'm on Freeland's side with that. And down in Houston, I'm on the side of, if you are buying that Valdez didn't do this on purpose, then I got a plot of land to sell you. Like Ricky Roman, Glengarry Glen Ross. Then please. Because if you sit there and you watch what happened with Cesar Salazar behind the plate, where he basically is and I don't know the last time that visibly, think about it, that you've ever seen that, where a catcher is literally using his hand to push to get the pitcher to back off a mound in a spot like that. Valdez gives up a grand slam. Then on the next pitch, gets crossed up, hits him with a fastball when he's expecting a breaking ball. And clearly that was on purpose. When you saw Valdez turn his back on the mound, look the other way, basically shunning his catcher, you would never see that if it was an accident. If you got guys crossed up on a pitch like that, where the pitcher had thought, let's say, that a breaking ball was called and thrown a fastball, he would walk towards the catcher. They'd probably have a mound meeting, and he would apologize. And then once he heard it was okay, maybe giggle with the catcher about how stupid it was, and he almost got him hurt. Because you can absolutely get badly injured that way if you were sitting there not expecting 93-mile-an-hour sinker, and you're thinking it's going to be like a 75-mile-an-hour curveball. There's no way that wasn't on purpose. He felt shown up, gave up the grand slam, got pissed off, and did it on purpose. And that's what happened. The agent comes out and says, oh, well, we know about Valdez's track record. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not blaming a spot of the manager because he's got to go ahead and play peacemaker. I'm not blaming Salazar, the catcher, who says, no, of course that wasn't on purpose, or Valdez, because whatever's behind the scenes, behind the curtain's got to be behind the curtain. You got to keep it that way. Because then it becomes a bigger deal. But there's no way that it just accidentally is coincidence that you got a situation where a guy gets pushed back, gives up a grand slam, and then gets crossed up in that manner. Think about how many pitches are shown in a baseball game. Think about how many bad pitchers are called up from the minors. They don't even know they're catchers. They met with them for 3 seconds. They're like, what do you throw? Guy just got called up on the bus from AAA, just got there before the game. And we never see situations like this where a guy gets crossed up and you could tell that the catcher thought he was going to throw something different because he had called something different. When was the last time you ever saw this? That's how you know it's on purpose. Because it came from a guy who's pitched a World Series, won World Series, thrown 4 opening days, and is that guy. That's how you know it's on purpose. It is what it is, but let's call a spade a spade. Speaking of which, let's do that with the NFL. Thank God real games start tonight because the preseason's an abomination. Talking about it a lot here in Atlanta because Penix and company didn't play. But when you look at the NFL preseason, you are hoping 2 things. 1, that it goes very quickly because it's painful. And 2, that nobody actually feels pain and gets hurt. That's it. Guys stay healthy. And a lot of times, there are important things that go behind the scenes and the underlying of that take place late in preseason games. And yeah, you find out who's going to be on the 53, find out who's going to win that depth chart battle for the nickel back, or, who's going to be the third down back and all those sorts of things. But we kind of know who's who when we get in, outside of a random quarterback, controversy, which, by the way, sometimes preseason will create because of the way it's handled. Just look at what's happening with the Giants. I think it feels to be Russell Wilson. And you're talking about New York. Jackson Dart, who I think was a great pick in the first place, and I loved it in the first place. The guy absolutely dominated in preseason, was brilliant. Whether it was against ones all the time, who cares? Whether it's because it didn't matter, who cares? The guy was brilliant. So now Russell Wilson going to throw his first pick in a game Sunday against the Commanders, and every Giant fan going to be on X and Twitter sitting there saying, time to get pulled. When he's 0-1, what do you think the questions are going to be for Brian Daboll? What do you think about Russell Wilson's performance? How much longer are you going to look at this? Would there be a scenario where Jackson Dart, et cetera? And then Dart's not named the 3 behind Jameis Winston. he's named the 2 because clearly it's his spot. And Jameis there basically just for culture and, be a good guy in the room. He there is entertainment, to be fair. But outside of the controversies, you have the Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel one, right? In Cleveland, not much to do. So thankfully, we actually get real games. Micah Parsons, that scenario, obviously the biggest story probably of the preseason. And that's where we begin because the Cowboys, primed to be stopped by the Eagles to open a season and continue to be a laughingstock. Meanwhile, we'll see whether or not the Micah Parsons, people are talking about, this being akin to in Charles Haley. And this is, of course, because A, it's a trade with the Cowboys. B, we just had the Netflix doc out to which we talked about, and we all knew what a move that was. And you could really say the same thing about Dion when he came over to go win that 3rd Super Bowl. But that guy who was that difference maker, Ken Parsons with Jordan Love and what the Packers have already building, can he go be that guy? Chance to go be that guy. The question, obviously, the last few days, been how healthy is he right now to be that guy week 1? But the Packers will be under a microscope. The Kansas City Chiefs always are, always will be. Funny thing about them, we will talk about all the attention that Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift had. We'll talk about all the stuff with Pat Mahomes and whatever else. We're going to find ways. I remember last year, we spent half the season or more talking about how the Chiefs aren't that good. They barely beat the Raiders that night on Monday Night Football or Sunday night, whichever one it was, right? They're not that great. 9-1. I don't think they're that good. They only win by 3 points a game. 10-1. Well, I don't like the way they played in the 4th quarter. 11-1. Yeah, the same story is going to happen here. There's nothing that tells me, and I know Rashee Rice out for a while, but with Worthy and the group that they have, there's enough weapons, and really Mahomes doesn't play that way. He never seems to need them anyway. The Chiefs are going to be really, really good. The question is, are they going to be good enough to get there again? And can the Bills or the Ravens stop them, the 2 teams that play against each other here this weekend? And every time those 2 teams play against each other, the games are fantastic. Because when you look at the way Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen played last year, right? One wins an MVP, the other one right there. But when you look at kind of the way those 2 guys run their teams and play, the star quality, the defenses on both sides, the AFC is going to be dynamic and fun to watch. NFC, more wide open. Where do the Packers fit into that? Can the 49ers bounce back? What do you expect really in the South? Can the Commanders and Daniels take that other step? We saw how deep they went a year ago. Are the Eagles going to stay healthy enough? How's Jalen Hurts going to play? Can Saquon do it again? Obviously, health going to be an issue, always is with running backs and their durability, but especially has been with Saquon over his career. But a little bit more of a wide open scenario with the Lions, the team where kind of you look at it and you say, okay, health really got in their way, especially defensively during the course of last year. Dan Campbell and his staff did the best they could to try and manage that, and they were right there. But now they have the expectations. Now it's not a surprise. Now they're the team with the target on their back. So a lot of big storylines as the NFL gets underway. Baseball in the home stretch. NBA and NHL are coming. Best time to certainly get into the SBO RTS. Whatever you want to talk about, do it. Twitter or X at Casey Stern. Comment on the YouTube side if you're listening on Apple and Spotify. You can do the same in either of those 2 platforms. And, of course, you can follow on Instagram as well, where you can search Unfiltered with Casey Stern. 321 coming up soon. We'll see you soon. 320 in the books and Unfiltered.